Hey, since I'm talking about a live action show for once, I get to try something I've never done before. We're gonna play an exciting game called Guess Who the YouTuber Is. Can you find them? Probably not, we all look so similar. Here, I'll even make it even harder for you. Okay, I think I might have put this on wrong, but who do you think it is? Is it this guy? It's probably this guy. Oh, and by the way, if you fail this quiz, I am expecting at least a $5 donation to the Patreon. This is mandatory, and I'll be collecting your answers at the end of the video. So, the One Piece live action show. It's very good. That's something I'm sure all of us wanted to be able to say, but thought we never would. We've got a surprisingly large amount of content to cover today, so let's just get right into it. I was serious about the Patreon thing though. I'll put your face on a wanted poster if you don't comply. Starting things off with episode 1, we get the same great introduction we have from the source material. Wealth, fame, power, it's all out there, go find it. It immediately ignites the spirit of adventure that One Piece is so good at conveying, and then introduces us to the perfect character for this kind of story. A young upstart haphazardly throwing water out of his crappy boat while declaring that he's going to be the king of the pirates someday. Speaking of kings, the first thing that stood out to me about this show was the set designs and the visual effects. Like, obviously there's a bunch of fake green screen stuff in this show, that's my department, I know, but there's also a ton of impressive practical work on display here. Basically every ship is real. A crew had to build like 10 boats for this show, or just repurpose old ones, but still, it's really cool and their hard work shows. Plus the wire work or CGI or whatever the hell they used when they send people just flying into the sun whenever they get hit is really cool. I remember smiling when Alvida hit that dude with her club in her first scene. And speaking of violence, there's something that my brother really appreciated about this show that I completely agree with. When people get cut, stabbed, or their skulls caved in, you actually see blood. This isn't something a lot of PG-13 ass shows and movies do. It definitely helps create this sense of authenticity, but back to Luffy. He gets brought onto Alvida's ship, he meets Kobe, and we get a first taste of what this show's script has to offer. So I don't know how contentious the writing for this show is, I haven't really deep dived into anyone's reviews yet, but in my opinion it fluctuates from mediocre to exceptional, never dipping into bad territory. For the former, I do think there are a lot of weak setups for exposition dumps, especially in this first episode. Like that intro where Luffy reveals who he is and what he's trying to do to the camera, only for it to be revealed that he's talking to a CGI bird. Or when Kobe's like, "You don't know who Alvida is?" and then he proceeds to read her character description off of the wiki, even though she's already done a pretty good job of explaining it with her actions. I know it's not fair, but I'm usually very lax about this when it comes to anime, but hyper aware of it when it happens in live action. I guess that's just because the characters look just like you and me, so anything that comes across as unnatural is amplified. I will give them this though, they do speed through this stuff as quickly as they can to keep the pacing tight and engaging. Good stuff. Another running theme in this show is we see a bunch of patented Oda flashbacks. Now someone new to this story should have no problem enjoying these, but if you'll remember, I didn't like most of them when I first saw them, so seeing them again in live action just kinda takes the wind out of my sails, if you will. Boo, you stink! They're more or less unaltered from their original form too, so I was just sitting around waiting for the thing that I know is going to happen to occur. Like, oh, Child Zoro is training with his best friend. Let me guess, she dies. By the way, I actually learned from a friend recently that she canonically died because she fell down the fucking stairs. I remember watching this scene in live action where they were playing it like completely seriously. And I thought it was weird that they just never told him the cause of death, but it was probably for the best that they left it out. By the way, guys, do you remember that time when John Wick wiped out like 100 people because his dog slipped on a banana peel and died? But yeah, aside from getting to see the red-haired pirates and Luffy's and all of Sanji's flashbacks, I thought that these were pretty boring for the most part. Moving right along, I cannot hold this in anymore. I love Luffy in this show. He is the best part of it by far. He might even hold a candle to his manga counterpart, but don't tell God I said that. This wonderful actor, whose name I won't do you the disservice of butchering, is wonderful as Luffy. He's charming, he's funny, he always has this doofy smile on his face that matches his infectiously optimistic yet naive mindset. Even the way he walks is so Luffy, like it's hard to explain how great of a cast he was. He's also a lot more mellow than his manga counterpart, as is true for most of the cast. So he's not as selfish or insensitive as he usually is, he's just a really cool dude who I would love to be friends with. By the way, did you guys know that Zoro kills people? I mean, it makes sense, he's slicing people with swords, but the manga doesn't like confirming stuff like that, so I always just saw it as a Pokemon-esque thing where the bad guys are just getting knocked out. But here in live-action One Piece, murder is all Zoro can think about. He says he kills people like 100 times. He does kill people like 100 times. In his first scene here, he cuts Mr. Seven clean in half. I remember laughing at the contrast of Zoro just cutting people's stomachs open while all the other Straw Hats are just punching or kicking them during fight scenes. Do not get into a fight with the Straw Hat crew and go after Zoro first. Worst mistake of my life. Anyways, Kobe is a pretty cool character, and so is Shanks, which reminds me, the casting in this show is unreal. I don't know whose job it was to find all of these actors, but dear lord am I thankful for them. Luffy, Zoro, Kobe, Nami, Alvida, Helmeppo, Axe Hand Morgan, Shanks, Gold Roger, Mihawk, every character we get introduced to in this first episode is like they jumped right off the pages of the manga. And they forged their own similar yet unique and charming personalities. They managed to have their cake and eat it too. Speaking of cake, Helmeppo. He gets his hair chopped off by Zoro, giving him that awful hairstyle he has in the manga because he thought it was funny. And he looks genuinely happy when Luffy finds what he did hilarious too. That's not in the manga, but it's a wonderful character moment all the same. Which brings us to our next point. These characters are so much fun when they interact with each other. Like, yes, there are some dud lines as there are in every TV show, but hot damn, they cannot touch the level of joy I feel when a joke hits the mark. But yeah, we've been on episode 1 for too long. On to this next one. Luffy, Nami, and Zoro are zooming along pretending to hate each other when who else but Buggy the Clown attacks to steal their Grand Line map. Buggy is awesome. In his first episode, he's doing his best to try and get cast as the next Joker, and it's kind of working. He really plays up the circus clown act. He tells lame jokes, he cares about lighting and stage directions and all that, but he has this intimidation factor that comes from the fact that he chained an entire town to the bleachers and forces them to laugh and cheer on command. Like, I know Buggy is a joke, he sucks in the grand scheme of things, but this line he drops here might be the hardest one in the entire show.
You destroyed everything!
Not everything. I let them keep their hands.
I love how they still set up the Straw Hat is my treasure thing and they have Nami fix it for him, which is something that'll get paid off in Arlong Park. But screw that, dude. Did you see the rubble of Orangetown? You guys all know what this means, right? We may not see the fabled buggy balls in the show, but they're here. They did this, and I couldn't be more proud of them. Also, here we see the start of another big change. Kobe, Helmeppo, and Garp are off doing their thing in parallel to what our protagonists are doing. Usually we just meet Kobe and Helmeppo, they disappear, and then post in his lobby we see them again along with Garp for the first time. In this show, Garp is here from the beginning, and he's all no nonsense, we're gonna find these pirates and crush them, I'm gonna be all intimidating, telling the truth is a core value of the Marines. And I'm just like, the Garp that I know just kinda hangs out, sleeps a lot, and doesn't care about a lot of things that he probably should care about. He's basically a second, older Luffy. And whenever his grandson gets up to some hijinks, he's just like, oopsie daisies, my grandson did what? And then nothing comes from it because he knows Luffy's a good person. So this new characterization feels a little weird for me, to say the least, but he does get a lot better as the episodes go on. I don't think he was a very good choice for this role from the perspective of a returning fan, because you know damn well he doesn't pose any threat to the Straw Hats and never intends to, completely removing all tension from the scenes where he gives chase. But again, that's not really an issue for people who don't know the story, and ultimately I'm pretty sure that's who this show was made for, so I'll just stop talking. Speaking of talking, they really pick up on swearing the second episode 2 begins.
Surprise, shithead!
That's not a Buggy quote.
It is now. They're like a YouTuber back when saying a naughty word in the first minute of your video would immediately get it torpedoed by YouTube. I loved seeing the red-haired pirates actually do something for once, and the recreation of Shanks losing his arm for Luffy is pretty cool. Buggy's CGI Chop Chop fruit powers actually look really good. And speaking of CGI, when we get to Syrup Village, another running trend caught my eye. This show is very particular about where its camera is at all times in order to hide imperfections. A lot of the time, this means we'll have an extreme close-up shot with a blurred background. And when a lot of these are used in succession, a scene can feel pretty claustrophobic. But I'm sure it was either that or getting a gander at something that would ruin the magical illusion of storytelling every 5 minutes, so I'll take it. Speaking of Syrup Village, here we meet Usopp, who is a bit of a weird case. I think that out of every character, he has the most awkward lines to read. See, this poor guy needed to play the role of both a compulsive liar and a scaredy cat. Two very exaggerated character traits that can miss the mark when brought to live action in my opinion. And it doesn't stick the landing a lot of the time. But the thing is, Jacob Romero is so charming and likable that he turns it around almost every time. Like seeing him screaming that the pirates are coming for the 6,000th time in live action just made me kind of squirm in my seat out of secondhand embarrassment. But the smile on his face as he says he's going to protect everyone, and the way he just like puts his arm on this dude's shoulder and is all like, yeah, I got you, bro. It saves it in all honesty. Anyways, the crew needs a ship, Garp and Kobe are taking up a ton of screen time playing Othello, and Buggy knows Arlong. Two of these things are gonna send One Piece purists into a frenzy. But if I can try to quell their anger for a second, consider this. One cool thing about this show is it has the power of hindsight on its side, so it can tease moments that realistically it has no business ever getting to. For example, Luffy says he can't steal a pirate ship because it's a part of the crew, teasing the arc for the Merry-Go that starts around Skypiea and ends in Enies Lobby. And if you don't know One Piece, just know that that's a really long time from now. Anyways, check out this transition.
I've never seen a house this big before.
There's no point in showing you that, I just think it's funny. So, Kaya. She does a decent job portraying the sickly and extremely rich girl here. She actually makes friends with Nami, who opens up as a result, which is great because she's been nothing but standoffish and apathetic up to this point. But as you know, trouble is brewing in Kaya's mansion. These two black cat pirates are here. I don't recognize them from the manga, and neither of them are Michael Jackson, so frankly, who cares? Kuro makes his appearance here, and he would be the most well-casted character in the show if the people who were in charge of that weren't cracked out of their fucking minds. This guy's mannerisms, his voice, the way he pushes up his glasses every 5 seconds, even when he's got his like weird knife hands on, it's great. He's the type who's super into well-laid plans, which is why it's hilarious when some random kid pulls up to his dinner table and says this.
Aesop mentioned that you're sailors.
Nope, not sailors. We're pirates.
But before his perfect foil gets the better of him, there's something I gotta bring up first. One of my favorite things about One Piece, as you may know, is how diverse the Straw Hat crew is, and how their unique strengths and weaknesses combine to form one unstoppable team. This show carries on that trend, and I'm very thankful for that. Luffy has crazy brute strength, rubber powers, and the innate ability to drive the plot forward. Usopp's sharpshooting and connections with Kaya come in handy. Nami's adeptness in all things thievery and deception get them out of a bind like 5 times. Zoro, like Luffy, is a great fighter, with this added level of pirate hunter experience that allows him to do stuff like sniff out Kuro as a pirate the second he meets him. Speaking of Kuro, this show is a horror movie now. They set up the fight by him by locking everyone into this spooky mansion as he teleports around and tries to stab them all with his knife hands. It's not high art or anything, but it's thrilling, fun to watch, and the cheesy setup put a smile on my face. I much prefer a new, cool direction like this as opposed to them haphazardly trying to recreate the big fight on the beach from the manga. So anyways, Kuro dies, and by that I mean he sails away on a boat. I was really tired when I wrote that line, please excuse me. Speaking of dying, Kaya might very soon. I don't know how that poisoning works or if it's ever explained, so like... Don't know what happens to her. Anyways, Luffy and Zoro still do that thing where they tell Usopp to get on board, which makes me very happy. As does hearing a new rendition of We Are as Luffy screams at the top of his lungs. Man, they make being a pirate look so fun in One Piece. It's not fair. Real pirates suck ass. Oh hey look, it's my actual dad, Garp. We get a flashback where Garp destroys Luffy's crappy pirate raft, then drags him off to train him to become a marine, showing the history and clashing ideologies of these two characters. It's another example of Netflix effectively toning something down for a new audience without sacrificing the message. Because I can imagine the outrage that would occur if Garp beat the shit out of his grandson and left him in the woods by himself in live action. Either way, this is more in line with the Garp that I know. Eating like 7 steaks for one meal, always doing wild stuff like throwing a cannonball at people with his bare hands. And when Luffy bounces it back, he's clearly super pissed, but then he just starts laughing. What a guy. Even in parts where I don't think the live action is all there, it still manages to capture some of the original spirit and charm. It's great. So now we find ourselves at Baratie, a place whose name I am still struggling to pronounce because it is referred to as both Baratie and Baratie in the same episode. Cool. In my original One Piece video, I said that this is what I consider to be One Piece's first truly good arc, so needless to say, I was super excited for it. And much like the rest of the live action, it's good, albeit very weird. First of all, the set design here is phenomenal, and if it's as functional as it looks, I pray that you guys are planning on turning it into an actual restaurant someday. Sanji is still the best. His characterization, his acting, his choreography, dude is perfect, and Zeph and Mihawk are not far behind. Mihawk is again, broken record, perfectly cast, and he has the most baller introduction ever. Dude straight up kills Don Krieg before he even has the chance to meet Luffy. And now that he's hit the scene, I want to bring up everyone's power level. For all the changes that were made in this story, the writers kept everyone's strength levels consistent with how they are in the manga, and I think that's great. It's clear that the Straw Hats have a literal 0% chance of winning against Garp or Mihawk, as is shown to us, and lesser villains like Kuro and Buggy fall flat when they can't rely on gimmicks to win. Meanwhile, characters like Arlong are stronger than Luffy, but not out of reach. This consistency makes the world feel a lot more believable as an adaptation, and I'm not sure if that's getting a lot of attention or not. So Zoro gets himself killed by challenging Mihawk just like in the manga, and the legend himself still drops the best line in all of the East Blue Saga here.
I don't hunt rabbits with a cannon.
Fuck yeah, he said it.
Yeah.
It's followed up by Sanji's backstory, one of the few that I really adore. The reveal that Zeph gave Sanji all the food they had and ate his own leg in order to survive is still shocking, moving, and powerful. But there's an elephant in the room, isn't there? With Don Krieg dead, how are they going to end this arc? Well, I would assume in an attempt to make the show seem less crowded character-wise, they just send Arlong there. Now, Arlong, I'm a little torn on him. I love his voice. I love little details like his skin getting this red tint as he becomes angry. But just, even when it's as minimal as it could possibly be, I still think that the costume and makeup look way too goofy and jarring. Was there a workaround? No, they did the best they could. That's just one of the caveats of making a live-action anime based on one of the goofiest art styles of all time. Another downside is you can tell they're very restricted when it came to using Luffy's powers in a fight. Sanji and Zoro get great choreography with fantastic wire work that is a spectacle to behold. Luffy gets punching a guy a few times and then a lot of close-ups to hide imperfections. His fights are ass, I won't sugarcoat that, and this tussle with Arlong is a great example of this. So, you know how it goes. Nami betrays the crew, Sanji joins it, he and Zoro fucking hate each other, and then it's off to Arlong Park. Also, the farewell that Sanji has with Zeph is a lot more subdued and thus less impactful than the original, at least in my opinion. I understand it's been a running theme to kind of lessen the emotions of a scene in order to make things seem more believable in live action, but I feel like it really bit them in their streaming service butthole here. Now, Arlong Park looks really cool. They built this whole little pool area with a mini boardwalk to make it seem more like, well, a park. It's something that gives it more of a connection to Sabaody, what with the whole amusement park thing, plus it's just a really cool place for a fight. Arlong and Nami really hit their stride here. Arlong is a manipulative, conniving douchebag who exerts his control over humans any chance he gets. Nami expertly portrays the ruthless yet still caring character we know from the original version of this arc. She tells Arlong to dump Luffy in the sea because she knows his friends will save him. She's clearly unhappy with her current predicament and even snaps back at Arlong as long as she's allowed to get away with it. And thankfully, since she's been such a Debbie Downer for most of these early episodes, this shift in demeanor compared to how she acts with the Straw Hats isn't jarring at all while still being noticeable and important for her characterization. But that's boring. Check this out, dude. Arlong flipped a house. The shot of him doing it is really funny too. It looks terrible. Speaking of terrible, Catboy Marine is still a scumbag. And once he steals all of Nami's money, we get a recreation of an iconic scene. Not gonna lie, I knew it was going to be good like 40 minutes before it happened because they built up to it in just the right way. As one of the first things Luffy does when he sees Nami in Cocoa Village is offer her his help. Obviously she rejects him, but once her own plans fail and Luffy stops her from stabbing into her own arm, you know, they did it justice. They even got the exact same shots. The scream, her tearing up afterwards, all the boys lining up ready to go kick some ass, like man, this really made me smile. So the fight with Arlong kinda sucks. Well, Luffy's does at least. Usopp, Zoro, and Sanji still get good stuff. This shot of Sanji kicking a fisherman, landing, then putting his hands in his pocket is probably my favorite shot from the whole show. Again, amazing work with whatever wire work or special effects you used to get him to fly through the air like that. It looks great. Usopp has his time to shine where he blows up that fish with the big lips in order to prove that he can win fights too. It's basically exactly like what it was in the manga, and that's sick. Luffy and Arlong's fight pales in comparison to the original source material in my opinion, and I think that's for pretty obvious reasons. The amount of time, budget, and crazy CGI needed to be completely faithful probably would have pushed the team way too far. So what we get is Luffy and Arlong hitting each other a few times until the tower crumbles. The coolest thing is seeing Arlong grow out his teeth again and Luffy breaking his sword, but let's be real here, compared to the manga, he went out like a total dork. So to wrap things up, Garp has a heart-to-fist talk with his grandson, Granddad of the Year right here. It's good that they got this whole will he, won't he lock up Luffy thing resolved in the first season, especially when somebody is about to take his place. I am so excited. This is a really good show. I want to see Alabasta very soon. Thank you to the crew who put this show together. You're doing great stuff, and I'm very glad that the fruits of your labor are paying off in such a big way. Thank you for watching, and a special thanks to my patrons, which will be you if you messed up the quiz in the beginning, right? Did you guess me? Probably not. You probably guessed that guy, so $5, idiot. Anyways, special thanks to Silent Secondary, Mr. Chocolate Salmon, and Volume Warning,
Shrouded Sun!
and the rest of my wonderful patrons.